before you judge me, I want you to listen to what I have to say, because I am not convinced that you would do any better. Of all the disciples, I was the only one from Judea. The rest of them were from Galilee. They knew each other. They were almost family, but they were jealous of me. Besides Matthew, I was the only one with a formal education. And Jesus trusted me with money. That's why He made me to be treasurer of the group. Like all of the 11, I was strangely attracted to Jesus. I mean, He could take a stand against evil no matter what. In that fearlessness, it reminded me of Mattathias. Mattathias took a strange, lonely stand against Antiochus Epiphanes. Antiochus was the Assyrian king who tried to destroy our Jewish way of life 200 years ago. One day when his ambassador went to Matthias' village and gave them all an ultimatum, he said, either you swear loyalty to the king and to the Greek culture, or you die. When one of the persons standing around stepped forward to accept the deal, Mattathias knifed him on the spot. And then he rallied those around him to join him in defending the one true religion. And they gathered and went into the hills. Later, after his son Judas had died in battle, after many great victories, Antiochus was finally kicked out of our country, and we were set free. All of the people who rallied around Mattathias became known as the pure ones. Fiercely loyal Jews. In fact, they became the Pharisees of my day. Not only did Jesus have conviction and courage, but He had power too. I mean, not only did he take a young boy's lunch of 5 loaves and 2 fish and multiply them to feed 5,000 people, but He had power over demons. Mary Magdalene's testimony to that, she was changed after she met Jesus. I remember that day when we were walking towards the city of Nain and this funeral procession was coming towards us. It was about the midday and the crowds were walking with Jesus. The disciples, we were worn and tired out, for we were responsible for going ahead to the villages and to let them know Jesus the Messiah was coming. But the people of that day, they were worn out with talk of messiahs. There had been a lot of false ones who had appeared lately, and by calling people to follow them, that God had told them that they were going to be joined in an effort to overthrow the Roman government. Many followed them, but Rome responded brutally. In Galilee, which was a hotbed of the rebellion, 1,000 rebels hung from trees, lining the highway. When Jesus said, if you want to be my disciple, pick up your cross and follow me, we knew what He meant. When we approached the city of Nain, we were exhausted and tired, and we saw the funeral procession come towards us, and we saw hope that Jesus would just ignore it. Lord, we're tired and we need rest, and besides the young man is dead. You can't bring him back to life. And to our surprise, Jesus stopped the procession and He walked over to the dead man's widowed mother and said, don't cry. And he reached over and touched the side of the coffin. A rabbi does not do that. Rabbis can never touch anything dead. They would be excluded from community for the rest of the day. Why would he do it? And then he reached over and he said, young man, I tell you, wake up. He stood up. He started talking. I have never seen anything like that in my life. I mean, we heard stories of Elijah restituting the widow's son, but I had never seen it. We thought those were old tales. I had never seen it with my own eyes, and I wasn't the only one. Hundreds of people saw it. I knew right then and there He was the Messiah. He was the one we had been waiting for. Now things were going to change. And when He rode into Jerusalem on that donkey, I got excited. That was a sign that God had told us that when the Messiah rides on a donkey, it was a sign that the Anointed One was coming. It was the sign of the day of the Lord when God fulfilled God's promise to banish our enemies and set us free. And when He rode into Jerusalem on that donkey, it was like He was telling all of our spiritual leaders that He was the King of Israel. Oh, I couldn't wait. And when He went into the temple and He threw out the money changers and the sacrifice peddlers and tossed them out of the temple, I thought, it's finally happening. He's finally starting to take action. He's finally going to show them what He's like, what He can do, and release our people and save us from our enemies. I was so excited. But all He did was go on the temple steps day after day and teach. And then at night He'd retreat back to Bethany to sleep. It seemed all of a sudden Jesus became very secretive and remote and different. I couldn't make sense of it. He didn't rally people around Him. He didn't call people to follow Him to create a holy war against Rome. Instead, he started talking about His death and the time of trial and the end of the age. And He could tell that I was deeply confused about Him. He would say more than once, He would warn us about someone among us must be careful not to be tempted by the evil one. And then when Mary took that expensive bottle of perfume and poured it all over His feet, I finally had to speak up. I said, Lord, didn't you know that perfume could have been sold and that money given to the poor? And He looked at me. I knew He understood what I was saying, but instead He praised her. And said something about her preparing Him for burial. What kind of talk is that from the Anointed? What kind of words are those? Wasn't He the one that said that all power had been given to Him by His Father? And here He was. What kind of talk is that for a Messiah? What kind of path was He leading us on? Why wouldn't He act? He had the power. Why wouldn't He act? I'd had enough of the delusion. We'd been deluded a lot by false messiahs, but at least they attacked Rome. Instead, all He did was start talking about His morbid death. Finally, I had enough. I went to see the authorities. And we made a deal, and they would arrest Him quietly. I know. It was a terrible, despicable thing to do, but someone had to do anything. He would not act. Someone had to force His hand. Someone had to do something so He would finally show them the power I knew He had in Him. He would not act. And then they arrested Him in Gethsemane and they put Him on a kangaroo court trial, and the Supreme Council sentenced Him to death. What had I done? God, what had I done? I caused this to happen. Why? God, why? Oh, the guilt is so much. Oh. Why? Don't scorn me. I hear you. I'm not sure that you would have really done any different. I mean, you say that Jesus is Lord, but where is He when the doctor calls you into his office and tells you you have a terminal illness? And what does He do for you when your only son goes to college, settled with scholarships, a bright future ahead of him, and then he dies one night because of a drunk driver. Where is your Lord Almighty then? How do you handle it when your enemies, who are outwardly wicked, get the upper hand over you? Oh, I know it. You say, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, and we repay evil with good. But don't you really wish God would strike them dead? Or do something to take care of them? Be honest with me. Be honest with yourself. What do you do when your enemies prosper and you suffer? Where is your Almighty Lord then? Well, I know, said it before. We return evil with good. Then how do you explain through the ages your people forcing enemies to convert by the sword or the punishment? And how do you make sense of the innocent people who have died in this search for the truth? You call Jesus Lord Almighty, then why don't you trust Him? Instead, so often, don't you take matters into your own hands too? I don't know. I made a mistake. A big mistake. But you don't have to make the same one. I mean, what do you do when your God doesn't meet your expectations? What do you do when you pray for what you want and God doesn't give it to you? What do you do when what you wish would happen never happens? How much will it cost for you to betray Him? For me, it was just 30 pieces of silver. Enough to set our slave free, but what's it take for you? What's it take for you to change sacrifice for comfort and convenience? What does it take for you to throw out that whole surrender thing and instead take matters into your own hands and try to control life as best you can? What does it take for you to... I hear you. You complain all the time about how the world has changed and it's going downhill, and yet what do you do about it? Or is it you and your people that talk about how you need to put God at the center, but then we never see you in worship. We never see you where God's name is honored and lifted up, and maybe just by being there, your heart can be changed and formed. Aren't you making a betrayal too? It's too late for me. But it's not too late for you. It's too late for me to surrender. To have my sins forgiven and be set free. Honor God. I missed. It's not too late for you.